We'll work on that for you. Good evening. Evening, Will. This public hearing is being convened in order to receive submissions from the public regarding proposed land use bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 445, 2017. Anyone who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard and to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaws. Any person who wishes to present a written submission to council may do so, and all written submissions must be received by council before the close of this hearing and presented to the minute taker. If a member of the public wishes to address council, they will be asked to sign the speakers list and should begin by clearly stating their name and address for the record. Comments should be related to the subject bylaw and be directed to council. Members of council may ask questions to seek clarification following your presentation on points raised. However, the main function of the council members is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council members to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decisions. These documents are available for review during the hearing. Your only opportunity to comment on the proposed bylaws is during this hearing. As members of council may not receive further submission, verbal or in writing, after the close of this hearing, council can determine when the proposed bylaw will be scheduled for consideration, and council may either adopt or defeat the bylaws or alter and then adopt the bylaws, provided that the alteration does not alter the use, increase the density, or without the owner's consent, decrease the density of any area that from what was originally specified in the bylaw. Yeah, I keep thinking I'll get better at reading that. So we've got quite a few speakers this evening, so I'm going to limit your opening remarks to 3 minutes, please. And at the end, if you have more to say, you can come back up after everybody's had an opportunity. So, Tyler, bring them on.
Mr. Krolukas.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. First we need Daniel to present.
We're going to have Daniel do a little presentation first.
He's got better.
Almost
Not only I read the second line.
Procedural. Yeah. Okay, it's okay, Crow, you can come back at the end.
Yeah.
Part of 3 minutes, Murray?
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. It was great to hear from you. Carry on, Daniel.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, here tonight for a public hearing for file RZ04 2017, so the Water General 1B Amendment Bylaw. So what we're talking about is the WG1B is the southwest corner of Bowen Island, affecting from the natural boundary out to the extent of Bowen Island Municipality's jurisdiction. So currently the zoning of this area is very small. The following uses are not permitted: community dock, group moorage facility, private moorage facility, or permanent moorage are all not permitted in the WG1B zone currently. The official community plan has objectives and policies that relate to Cape Project Curtis. So Objective 40, for example, encourage the retention of portions of Cape Project Curtis in a natural state accessible to the public, including the ecologically sensitive coastal bluffs and portions of the shoreline. And Policy 152 again lays out policies for Cape Project Curtis, including the conservation of conserve the majority of the coastline for ecosystem protection, especially the south-facing ecologically sensitive and unique coastal bluff. So in terms of council direction, so October 31st of 2016, council made a motion to direct staff to prepare an amendment of the land use bylaw, consistent with council's intention of bylaw number 381/2015 that established the WG1B zone. To provide for greater certainty, the land use bylaw prohibits construction or placement of any form of private dock, pier, wharf, raft, or boat lift facilities at the lands known as Cape Project Curtis, and that prohibit docking, launching from affixed equipment or structures or moorage in the seabed adjacent to that area other than temporary moorage for navigational or emergency purpose. So based on that direction, staff drafted bylaw 445. So that The bylaw would replace the prohibition lists in the WG1B zone with the following text. So despite any other provision in this bylaw, the following structures, facilities, and uses are not permitted. So that includes a dock, pier, wharf, pilot, or other structure or facility, whether or not it consists of one or more floats, ramps, or gangways, whether or not it consists of a vessel lifting device, whether or not it allows for pedestrian access to and from shore or an upland lot, whether or not it's a community dock, group moorage facility, or a private moorage facility. But this prohibition doesn't include a buoy, anchor, or other navigational aid that is normally carried in the vessel to be moored. It also prohibits moorage other than moorage that is necessary or incidental to a navigational purpose or to deal with a life safety incident or other emergency situation. So at the September 21st, 2017 council meeting, council gave first reading to this bylaw. They also referred the bylaw to the Advisory Planning Commission, to the Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee, and to the Islands Trust. And at November 27th meeting, council gave second reading to the bylaw, and they directed staff to schedule a public hearing for this bylaw. So the APC considered it at the September 18th, 2017 meeting of their commission, and they supported section 4A of the proposed amendment bylaw with a couple suggestions, and they also did not support 401B of the proposed amendment as it relates to moorage buoys. The Parks, Trails, Greenways, and Advisory Committee met on October 17th, 2017 to discuss, and they said that they supported the proposed amendment to draft Bylaw 445. The Islands Trust met on November 1st, 2017 to consider this bylaw, and they resolved that Bylaw 445 is not contrary or at variance to the Islands Trust policy statement. Finally, we held an initial public hearing on this bylaw, January 22nd, 2018. So 4 speakers spoke at that public hearing, 2 in favor and 2 opposed, and we received 14 written submissions, 1 in favor and 13 opposed to the proposed bylaw. Following the initial public hearing, as of March 6th, when we prepared and published this presentation, we've received 2 letters, 1 in favor and 1 opposed. And I believe the count from Tyler, as of just before this public hearing, was 65 since the published agenda. 57 were included on table and 8 received since Tyler had set up here. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Well, Mr. Lucas, please join us.
Can I just have one question? It was 57.
57 are included in the on-table
Yeah.
that Tyler's printed and prepared, and we have received 8 more additional since.
So total
that was-
65.
Okay, but you haven't tallied.
You haven't
Yeah.
split them up yet.
But no, we haven't split them
Nay
up.
or yay.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a seat. Join us.
That's okay. Well, what I've got to say is going to be short, sweet, and to the point. Basically, there's very little I can add to some of the well-articulated letters that you've received that are opposed to this bylaw amendment, other than to say that if you make a decision in favor of moving forward with it, there will be litigation. There is the high probability that there will be damages and litigious actions, and so damages that basically will be borne by the taxpayers, which is what really affects me. And I would hope, as a past councillor, with 9 months to go in your term, that you might put your talents and your time and our tax dollars to something that's much more beneficial to people in this island. Thank you.
Thanks. No, absolutely not. There would be no reaction to anyone. What happens is you start clapping for somebody, then somebody gets up and says the opposite thing, and people clap for them, and before you know it, it's a schmozzle. We expect no reaction from the audience, from any comments. Please.
It's sometimes intimidating for people to get up and speak in the public, and I just find through experience that it may preclude somebody who is willing to get up and speak. So thank you.
Mr. Bruce Russell, please.
Let me congratulate you, Murray Skills, for reacting the way you did. I've sat in many past council meetings where that type of conduct, if not worse, occurred, and there was absolutely nothing done about it. So I take my hat off to you for that. Bruce Russell, I live at 303 Robert Road. I am strongly in opposition to the proposed bylaw. I have sent a letter previously, and I wanted to speak because I was out of town on business before. I'm very concerned with the never-ending assault on the owners of the Cape, and in this particular case, the 5 lot owners who have either built a dock or have permission to build the dock. And I really would like to see the whole community and certainly council get on to what I think are more productive things that benefit all of the community, rather than in this particular case, I think it benefits more a special interest group. I'd like to wrap my comments around a note that came to my attention from the Nature Conservancy, who encouraged their members to write letters in support of the amendment. And I thought there were some rather interesting comments made, which quite frankly I disagree with quite vehemently. They suggest that they suggest the members should write and suggest I support the proposed bylaw for the following reasons. The amendment does not change the intent of the bylaw. It merely clarifies the interpretation of the bylaw. I totally disagree. I think that if not certainly specifically in spirit, I think this amendment singles out the 5 dock lot owners and treats them in a manner that nobody else that has a dock in this island is being treated. They say that the bylaw amendments are limited in its application. I'm not too sure what it's limited to. As far as I'm concerned, it's only limited to 5 dock owners, which I think is very vindictive and totally unfair. And the further concern I have is that this bylaw at some time could be used as a template. I'm not saying it would be, but it could be, and it could be moved to any other area on the island. They suggest that this bylaw is in the public interest. I think if it's in the public interest, it's more so in the interest of a special interest group, the group that has not wanted docks at the Cape since the Cape was first conceived. And I think far too much time and effort is being spent on this matter. I stand corrected. Perhaps council can eventually confirm. I think the legal expenses to date on the dock issue is something in the neighborhood of $165,000.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, and I think that type of money could be used much better for a lot of other needed amenities in the community. Was that a long 3 minutes or a short 3 minutes?
That's over 3 minutes.
Was it? Okay, take it out of the next speaker's time. Thank you.
Mr. Don Ho, please.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor, council members. Tonight, I speak on behalf of my wife and myself because we do own property which is known as Lot 13 on the Cape, on Bowen. And I also speak on behalf of my partners who together we own the Cape on Bowen Community Development Limited. And we have been very good citizens, and we have always tried to do what our neighbors want us to do. And so unfortunately, sometimes with good intentions, you never really answer the expectations of a lot of people. So before I start off to say why I oppose this bylaw, I would like to give a brief introduction as to my history. It's that because when I come to the island, people look at me as, oh, must be an alien from somewhere else, you know. Actually, no, I have been in Vancouver for many, many years, over 35 years now. And before I started off doing the project known as the Cape on Bowen, I was running a very successful business, which was to deliver care to the seniors. And our model has been very unique in that we provide an aging-in-place community. And I was successful enough to be able to build and operate 8 different locations in the province of British Columbia. So it was with that passion that I delivered the services, and that's why it was immensely successful. But then, about 14 years ago, now I remember 14, because that was the time that my partners were retiring. They were much older than me. Therefore, they say, yeah, to run this business is a bit tough because it's not really a very lucrative business to bring in a lot of profits and so on. So yeah, at that time I had to sell the business, but then my passion with my business still persists. But then there was a turnaround in my life in that from being a senior care provider, I started looking for another project where I can spend my time, because I was kind of forced to retire when I had to sell the business, you know. So when I first stepped my foot on Bowen Island, I really fell in love with it. I loved the property so much that I decided I will make something really attractive and beautiful for the islanders to enjoy. That's why in my first round of submission for a neighborhood plan, I was suggesting to cut off half of the property to be donated to the public. And also the fact that I meant to build something that was really for the enjoyment of the islanders in general, not just for the specific few. So that is how I have to come back, I know, after everybody speaks, because I'm only halfway through. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
He can have my 3 minutes. Of anybody in the room, I think you should take the time to hear from him. So, carry on.
That's my 3 minutes.
Actually, maybe the next 3 minutes is speaking on behalf of the Cape on Bone partners. All right? Is that okay? Sure. Yeah. All right then.
In deference to your position, sir, we will let you have another 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
But McCaskill's out.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, so the reason why actually I started off the care business was from my personal experience of having to look after my parents. When one of my parents, and also the parents of my wife, both have kind of some form of support that they needed, but they have to be torn apart just because there was no continuum of care or aging in place properties in that time. So having done what I did, I had a lot of growth during those 10 years that I did the business. I developed 8 different locations, and that's how my model of aging in place was so well received. So now that I am now on the Cape on Bowen, I spent a lot of time on it, but since I have spent 14 years and still could not really get what I want to do on the island, because I have made 2 attempts to propose something that is more to answer the needs of the islanders, not just to look after the seniors, but also intergenerational. That is why my Candy was even more passionate in the business than myself. She is the one that really pushed me. No, this is something that we should do. It's not really after money. We are not a developer. We are really community builders to build a sensible community for everybody to live together, rather than just to look after a few who can afford to spend the money to buy the lots from us, you know. So that was never our intention. So we have really tried our utmost best to protect the environment, to protect these shores and so on. So I hope that I have not offended anybody in the room by having said that. So now it goes to the conclusion that I have to jump to conclusion in that case, in that my comments on the bylaw is, the bylaw as it is drafted is considered by many to be discriminatory. The Cape on Bowen has been covered in the media over the years, very negative. I do not wish for this island to have a reputation of being unfriendly, unfair, and I take this opportunity to broaden the context. Injustice is not what Canadians are about. So it is really our belief that we are trying to do our best, and even though sometimes we may step on the foot of some people, yet our intentions are always very well intended. And we do like to see that justice be done rather than discriminating on the dot. So thank you very much for the extra 3 minutes for my wife, not for this gentleman. Thank you.
Mr. Ian Henley, please.
If you don't mind, I would prefer to speak here.
No, please have a seat, join us.
Everybody who's here.
No, Ian, you're speaking to us. Please have a seat.
Very well. You can hear me back there, can you?
Oh,
yeah.
Very well. They're always rude. That's a tough act to follow, isn't it? Mayor Steele, members of council, staff, and, if I may say so, my friends behind me. Joan and I'm going to read this. I can hardly read it, and it's big print. I may have to have somebody help me. Joan and I have had the privilege of residing on the waterfront property in Tunstall Bay for almost 50 years. And we have a mooring boy. We have enjoyed the CRC lands many times, frequently with guests, but always aware that we were privileged to enjoy that wonderful place. In the early 80s, I was chair of the Advisory Planning Commission. And one of the concerns we had was what to do with CRC. We decided that Bowen should put the CRC in a 10-acre zone. We expected that the owners of the land would develop it pursuant to a comprehensive development plan. Our recommendations were adopted by the GVRD. Bowen was not a municipality at that time. There is a 4-to-3 split on council. Among the 4 proponents, I believe there are 2 of them who may are ready to material to listen to what I have to say and the submissions that have been made. So I'm addressing this to those 2 people who I think they know who they are. When I first heard about this activity by council, I was very angry. But after I changed, after I heard a CD by Anne Mortefi, in which she sang a song about anger. And I decided I would not be angry. So that's why I am going to be sorry. Yes, indeed, I am sorry. So many friends and others are forced to battle with one another. I'm sorry for that. I am sorry that there are so many otherwise reasonable people who think, oh dear, I'm sorry. If you'll permit me, I will come back.
Okay. That was actually 3.5 minutes, Ian, so I wasn't.
Oh, very well.
I was trying, sir. I was
I'm
trying.
thankful, I'm sorry, and I'm thankful for small mercies.
Mr.
We do
Doug
have
Cooper,
your
please.
email, Ian.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you regarding this bylaw. I submitted my full comments in writing today, so you can please take the opportunity to read through the detail. I want to speak to a very basic issue, which I think can help some of my friends and earlier speakers understand the context in which this decision is being made. The conservancy efforts around Cape Roger Curtis date back to at least the 1920s. There were major efforts through different decades. In 1992 to 4, I was part of the OCP steering committee where Cape Roger Curtis issues were addressed, and so on and forward to our council that I sat on in 2008 to 11 that dealt with the comprehensive plan. And what happened there is the crux of what I want to focus you on. The owners elected to go with the existing zoning under the land use bylaw, and staff negotiated with them how to manage the public interest with respect to public access and use, and with respect to environmental protection of sensitive areas. And in that subdivision agreement, there was a covenant that the land would not be disturbed on the foreshore. And the lots would set back from that 30-meter covenant. And that covenant, in addition to other trails and dedications and some pocket lands around sensitive areas, were in exchange for the 59 lots. There is no eradication of private property interests. The deal was that the 59 lots were granted in exchange for those public protections. And so what you're doing with this bylaw, in my view, with respect, is closing the loopholes that the owners have managed to find around whether or not the structure sits on the land or whether it's above or below the highest high water mark, which we know they're not. They're violating the covenant. We've proven that at the King Tides. But this bylaw is just common sense. It's closing up some loopholes. It's getting over that chapter of the past, and it's doing exactly what you were elected to do and took an oath of office to do, which is to preserve and protect the islands for all generations. Thank you.
Mr. Noah Price Jones.
Sweet, follow Doug. Brad. Probably totally opposite, but you might too. My name is Noah Price Jones, 340 Forest Ridge Road. Good evening, councilors, mayor, and staff. I wasn't going to come and speak to this, but I found it sort of mandatory because I have my pulse on what I feel the community feels. I talk to a lot of people about politics. People hate it, they don't like me, they feel, you can't do that. And this is the feedback that I get from a lot of people. There's no point in going, they have a personal agenda, they won't change their minds. That's wrong. That's wrong that our community feels like that. The second point is I found out how much money has been put into this. If you take that money, instead of just verbally supporting the bike park, you could have built it. You could have built the kids' park out of Blue Water. You could have a skate park. You could have infrastructure for the youth that are marginalized. We have documents that say the youth are marginalized, the seniors are marginalized. That money can be used for that. And the third thing, and this is what disturbed me. This disturbed me to my core, and that's why I'm here. I'm shaking, because I'm mad about this. I brought it up with one of our members in our community. They said to me, I'm okay with that, because people from mainland China can't come in here and do that to our island. That is a racist statement. This bylaw fans that. It fans that ideology. It's not okay for our community and our council to vote on this. I'm opposed to this, and I know a lot of other people are, just for that point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Caroline Orr, please.
I'm Caroline Orr at 973 Captain Kate's Walk. Thank you for this opportunity. In response to Mr. Hooper's reference to the ecology, I'm submitting a letter from my neighbor who is a marine biologist, a doctor of marine biology, and spends every weekend out at the Cape. He's checked he's been checking that since its existence. So I hope it's quite technical, but I hope that will be read by the council and his submissions. On my part, I'm registering my opposition to the above amendment. My disagreement really borders an embarrassment for the continual harassment some on Bowen Island have shown towards the owners of Cape Roger Curtis. These owners have complied with constant moving conditions set by council, and now trying to impose further restrictions on their property, to my mind, seems an assault on their rights. They have created a magnificent and safe sea walk along their coastline. Prior to the paths and bridges being built by them, making your way down to the lighthouse over fallen trees was seldom undertaken by any but the very young and agile. Now it is enjoyed by Bowen Islanders of all ages, as well as visitors from the lower mainland. How can we as neighbours not be grateful and happy about this? Docks and mooring buoys have a positive effect on the return of the herring to Howe Sound, which in turn has brought the dolphin and the orca back to our area in greater numbers. To quote Dr. Lynn, these pilings, properly covered, are appropriate habitat on which herring can lay their eggs. Docks are partly enabling us to help in the recovery of the species to Howe Sound. All of us here choose to live surrounded by water. Let's allow our neighbours to enjoy their property. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. James Lafferty, please.
I need 6 minutes, but I'm wearing 2 hats.
You have 3 minutes.
Oh, that's not fair and equal. I'll have to go at the end, I guess. Okay, so James Lafferty, 1605 White Sails. As a resident, taxpayer, and concerned citizen, I speak against the proposed amendment to Bylaw 445 that disproportionately affects one specific area on Bowen Island. A little background: as a resident, I live on White Sails Drive, which used to be the dead-end road. Now it's the main access to the Cape. My backyard used to be a forest, but was blasted for 2 years to make DC Road, which is the secondary access to the Cape. As a result, I'm deeply in tune with the developments at the Cape and directly affected by them. That being said, I don't own White Sails Drive, nor do I own any land in the Cape, nor do I own the land that DC Road was built on, so while this might make me feel frustrated, my feelings alone don't affect landowner rights. I care about equality. I believe people should be treated equally, whether it be on a racial, gender, cultural, or just human ground. I also believe that laws and bylaws should apply to everyone equally. It is unfair to use the rule of law to specifically target one area or group of people on the island. If any bylaws regarding the use of docks, floats, and buoys are to be considered, I would urge you to make them the same across the whole island. Anything less maybe open up Bowen Island to scrutiny that will be hard to defend in court, and we will end up wasting more money than we've already wasted on this matter. It's not right, it's not fair, and it's not equality. Sorry if I'm talking too fast here. I'm trying. On that note, as a president of Tunstall Bay Community Association, located one bay over from Cape Roger Curtis, that has a community dock as well as a fair amount of buoys, I have serious concerns about the amendment and its implications. We've had a community dock there and buoys for over 50 years, and while a lot of members enjoy it, it's also used by Bowen Island Yacht Club, the Learn to Sail program, Bowen Island Kayaks, and it's also the designated disaster response recovery zone for the west side of Bowen. If this goes through, it will set a big precedent. What happens when another councillor decides that they don't like Tunstall Bay? Will they legislate that we can't use our docks or floats or our buoys? What's next? Bowen Bay, King Edward Bay, Snug Cove, where does it end? As a taxpayer, I want you to take a good look at the opposition letters regarding this. Last I checked, there was a lot more in opposition than in favor. These people in opposition aren't people with radical ideologies. They are people who made Bowen what it is today, common sense people seeing some wrongdoing taking place and now feel it is time to step in. As a taxpayer, I'm upset that there are a few on council that have made this openly their personal crusade, but have not done so on their own dime. They're doing it with public funds, which is unacceptable. The docks have been stopped, no docks are allowed to go up, but now we're trying to remove or render useless the existing ones. I, the taxpayer, have already had to foot the bill for somewhere between $102,000 to $200,000 relating to the matter, and we don't have anything to show for it. If it goes through, we're going to be on the hook for a third legal defense cost. We could lose for discrimination. In short, a few local people on Bowen have strong feelings toward this, think their feelings trump everything else, and the island as a whole will be on the financial hook in the fallout. One person's rights to equality don't end where someone else's feelings begin. Let's call this openly what it is. It's overstepping the municipality's authority. It's unfair, vindictive, childish, strong-arming, poking a hornet's nest, and discriminatory.
feel like the Oscars.
Can I just go right to the end? No. Okay.
You can come back.
All right.
Who we got next?
John Dowler, please.
Good evening. My name is John Dowler, 499 Malmore. There are a couple of things I'd like to kind of help to ground us a little bit here. We've been talking about discrimination at the Cape as if it was discrimination against a set of people. It really disturbed me to hear that some people think that's a racially motivated thing or a rich-poor related thing. What I'd like to tell you about why there's a discrimination of Cape Roger is it is clearly different from any other area on the island. What you have there is a rock foreshore that goes way out into the water. It's been enjoyed by people for generations and appreciated as a wide open oceanfront space. Now, these docks that have been put in are not your mama's docks. These are not, 30, 60 feet docks. These are docks. I'm going to pass some of these down so you can see the scale of these things.
No,
They're,
we don't do that.
If you just pass it to Tyler. And then
Okay,
you can-
that'd be
He
fine.
includes it in the package.
I'll hold one up. What we're seeing are an upside down poster. These little figures here are human beings, and this is the scale of the dock. It's an industrial scale structure. It's not a little thing that comes out from someone's property, which is why I don't think people elsewhere on the island need to fear that this is going to target them eventually. Their circumstances are entirely different. The environmental, the aesthetic values are entirely different. Another thing I'd like to remind you about is that the special interest group we're talking about created this petition in 2014. Fast there. I'm shaking because a lot of the people in this room are friends of mine who I have great respect for. I'm sorry, we're turning the phone back. Anyway, these are the names of people who signed the petition clearly asking not to put giant industrial scale docks at Cape Roger Curtis. We said nothing about the people there who I do feel sympathy for. I do understand they had expectation. But we made it clear way before any docks were made that this was a giant public concern. And so it pains me that there's so much anger towards the people who have been trying to preserve the values that they care about on public land. And that there's been a confabulation of property rights with public property rights. I don't think any of the people who live on the waterfront would want a dock gangway going from the property behind them over their property to the water, just like I, as a person using a beach, don't particularly appreciate a giant structure going over the beach to the water. I think we just have to keep a perspective here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murray, opportunities.
If anybody else plans a demonstration of standing up and holding things and so on, please don't. And please, let's try to stick to talking about the bylaw, okay? This is a specific bylaw amendment. This is a public hearing about the bylaw amendment. So please, let's try to close this down a little tighter here. Hi, Murray.
Hello, Murray. How are you?
Gary, I know you will.
The other Murray. I wasn't going to speak tonight because I already have on this at the previous meeting and you've got my letters. But I just wanted to ask Daniel. I did this.
No, Murray.
You
Just tell us what.
Well, okay. I wanted to refer to Daniel's presentation, the opening presentation. The old adage. I think I understand what you meant to say, but I'm not sure that what I heard is really what you meant. The presentation that Daniel made, indicated that there were more letters in favor of the amendment than there were against it. I believe that's what he said.
Just as a point of process, what will happen is we accept comments till the close of tonight's public hearing.
Right.
Staff will provide that package to council and a follow-up report to council, which is the minutes, including all the for and against.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's what he said.
No, okay. That's what I heard, that it was a little backwards, and I just want to make sure that the minutes do say.
There will be a full tally that will be presented to council.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Mr. Ronnie Day?
Rodney Dank, 431 Trunk Road. We're here again. We all live on an island and you're trying to cut off 25% of it from the ocean. I really think that it's a bad, bad bylaw. I don't think that we're gonna see that many docks out there just through common sense. Now then, you may not like the first ones or second ones out there because they didn't work for you, but they'll improve that. There won't be that many more. I don't think we should be wasting our time trying to stop things. Someone commented that 30 years ago they designed the 10-acre lots so they could be subdivided. Well, no, John Rich, working with the council, or excuse me, the Islands Trust, put 10-acre lots in to stop development, and we're still trying to stop development. We keep going through this. That's the mess we're in today, and earlier today you had a problem, you can't find housing for people. Well, this is why you're spending all of your time trying to stop things instead of trying to improve things. Thank you.
All right, those are all the names on this list.
Yes. You haven't spoken yet. Now, it's limited to 3 minutes, Anna.
Yeah, just,
Please join us.
I'm from the Ferrière. I support the proposed amendment for the following reason. The amendment does not change the intent of the bylaw. It merely clarifies the interpretation of the bylaw. I urge the municipal council to enact the amendment.
Thank you. Succinct. Yes.
Hi there. I'm Claudia Schaefer, and I support the amendment to the bylaw. 20 years ago, I worked for 3 years on the Sunshine Coast with the Ministry of Environment, mapping all sensitive ecosystems of their coastal area and adjacent islands. And it's a sensitive ecosystem inventory that's available on the internet. And we found that there were so few shoreline areas that were left intact on the Sunshine Coast and all the islands adjacent compared to the expansive, relatively undisturbed shoreline at Cape Roger Curtis. And I think that is the key of why people are concerned about that area, because it, you know, even in the context of Howe Sound, it is, and the Sunshine Coast, it is, it's quite unique and important. Those coastal bluffs are being degraded all over the south coast of BC, and you know, having docks further degrades those ecosystems, and they're very special in terms of the species they support, and I think that's the main reason that people are you know, wanting to preserve that foreshore and coastal Gulf ecosystems. And so I support the amendment and the original bylaw and its intent. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Okay, do we have anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak? Okay, do we have anyone who has previously spoken who would like to come back for another 3 minutes? Yes, Ian. Come on up.
Thank you. I got a few more sorries about this, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm sorry that I can't read very well, but I'll do the best I can. I'm sorry that there are so many otherwise reasonable people think, who think they have the right to use their own property. Just because they have been, and use that property, just because they have been allowed to use it for many years. It's like the old story of the dog in the manger. The dog take over the manger. The people who used that property took it over and wouldn't let the owners come in. I'm so sorry that after asking the owners to submit to the neighborhood plan, or to submit a neighborhood plan, it incurred many millions of dollars in cost to the owners. And it was approved by the Islands Trust, by the staff, and many consultants. Everybody said it was okay. And much to their amazement, the council at that time refused to approve the neighborhood plan. Goodness knows what their reason was. So we lost all those wonderful things. Council, wait a minute. I'm so sorry that the owners did not start an action against the Muni for damages because of their unfairness. And I know darn well they would have won, and they would have got a lot of damages. But they turned the other cheek. I'm so sorry, because if this bylaw is passed, how many other docks and buoys will be at risk? I'm so sorry that my taxes are being used to pay legal costs of over $150,000 in a previous lawsuit. I'm so sorry that if this bylaw is passed, that there will be another lawsuit, and that there will be costs which will probably be more than what we have paid already. I hope that I'm referring to at least two of the members of this council, will reconsider your position and will vote against the bylaw to avoid being sorry. And it's a pity, isn't it? I would like to thank everybody in this, in front of me, the mayor and councilors, for giving me the privilege of appearing before you, and you patiently listened to me.
Thanks, Ian.
And I would just like to add one thing. I should have said this in the beginning. I'm handicapped. I'm visually handicapped. I'm at a disability. And I think if I ever have the opportunity to appear before you again, that you will have regard for my disability and my inability to perhaps express myself as a normal person could. And with that in mind, I will probably appear before council at some time to see what, if anything, can be done. Thank you very much.
Okay. I do believe that wraps it up.
I was gonna finish.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you want to come back up here? Sorry.
Can I slow it down now?
I don't know. How much more have you got?
I think I was at the point where I was saying I don't envy any of you to trying to make hard decisions in a small community. I was against the amendment though. So passing this amendment will continue exposing us to residents, concerned citizens, and taxpayers to more liabilities, court costs, and general discourse. We need to be the bigger person and know when to walk away. Cape has been somewhat of a development debacle since its inception and continues to be a dividing conversation among all Bowen Islanders. We need to accept that there may have been mistakes made by previous administrations in regards to the development of the Cape, and we need to accept that this is where we are at today, and it's never going back to a privately owned public parkland. We need to accept that there are a few docks there to stay, but no more will be built. Please, let's stop reopening this wound and continually trying to retroactively punish the Cape. Let's drop the vendetta that we continue to hold against the owners there and finally get some closure on this matter. Only then can we, the citizens of Bowen Island, finally come together united and move on from this. Thank you.
One more point that I'd like to make, that I forgot to mention before, is that when the purchasers of property at Cape Roger Curtis went, when they bought their property, they knew that they were not allowed to build docks. So we're not devaluing the property value, because they went in knowing that there weren't supposed to be docks there, and then went against that, finding loopholes to build those docks. And so I think that's just something we should keep in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay.
So, let's try this again. So, do we have any further submissions? Okay, so for a second time, I will ask if we have anybody else who would like to speak to this. And for a third time. Am I missing anyone? Anyone else want to speak? Okay, there being no further submissions, I will ask the council to pass a resolution on this guy?
Yes, so it would be their first one.
Yes. The recommendation is that all written and verbal submissions regarding Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002, Amendment Bylaw number 445, 2017, up to and including March 12, 2018 be received, and that the public hearing be adjourned. So moved, seconded. And all in favor? So this public hearing is adjourned. Thank you all.